The execution pit of Warlord Krathsol was legendary across 12 systems. It was a circular arena carved from obsidian stone, 50 meters deep, with walls too smooth for any creature to climb. At T-bottom, something always waited. The rendered a monster bioengineered from the genetic nightmares of 100 conquered worlds. 6 meters of scaled muscle, 4 sets of razor-sharp mandibles, and a hunger that never, ever slept. Warlord Krathsol stood at the pit's edge, all 4 of his arms crossed in satisfaction as his soldiers dragged a lone human prisoner forward. This human had been caught sabotaging a critical supply depot, destroying enough rations to starve 3 battalions, an act that demanded a very public, very brutal execution. Behold. Krathsol's voice boomed across the gathered crowd of soldiers, merchants, and slaves. This is what becomes of those who defy the Dominion. The human, designated Sergeant Jake Morrison, didn't struggle. He simply glanced down into the darkness where the rendered waited, its bioluminescent eyes glowing like hateful stars. "Any last words, Deathwilder?" Krathsol sneered. Jake looked up at the warlord with an expression that wasn't fear or resignation. It was something else entirely. "Yeah," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "You should have checked what I was really doing in that depot." Before Krathsol could even process the words, his soldiers hurled Jake into the pit. The human fell, but hit the ground in a controlled roll, a testament to intense training. He came up in a crouch as the rendered emerged from the shadows, a living embodiment of evolutionary terror. The crowd leaned in, expecting the spectacle to be over in seconds. The beast lunged, but Jake didn't run. He sidestepped with impossible fluidity, and as the rendered's mandibles snapped on empty air, Jake's fist connected with the creature's eye cluster. The impact echoed through the pit like a gunshot. The rendered tricked a sound no one had ever heard it make before. The sound of pain. Krathsol's confidence began to waver. This monster had torn through armored warriors far larger than this human. It shouldn't be possible. Jake moved like water, like violence given form. Every action was efficient, calculated, and brutal. When the rendered's spiked tail whipped around, Jake didn't dodge. He grabbed it, twisted, and used the creature's own momentum to slam it into the pit wall. When its acid blood sprayed, Jake had already moved, letting it eat into stone instead of his own flesh. "Impossible," Krathsol breathed. The crowd was utterly silent. The rendered was an apex predator, engineered to be unstoppable, but it had never fought something from Earth, a planet where survival means becoming harder than everything trying to kill you. Jake's ancestors hunted mammoths with sharpened sticks. They survived ice ages. Earth doesn't create prey, it forges endurance hunters. Jake held a new weapon, a piece of the rendered's own mandible, snapped off during the fight. With surgical precision, he drove it through the creature's brainstem, a move he'd learned by watching the beast kill 3 other prisoners before him. The unkillable monster collapsed, dead. Jake stood over the corpse, breathing hard. He looked up at Krathsol, his prison clothes being eaten away by acid blood, but his skin untouched. He'd coated himself in the pit's alkaline dust. "You asked about my last words, Jake Khaled." "Oh," I said, "you should have checked the depot." "I wasn't destroying food, Warlord. I was poisoning it. 3 days ago, right before your soldiers ate." Krathsol felt his stomach's plummet. Behind him, his lieutenant collapsed, foaming at the mouth. Then another, and another. The poison was working. "The thing about humans," Jake continued, "is we don't think like you. You see an execution. We see reconnaissance. Those 3 prisoners before me taught me everything about your pet." Using the rendered's corpse as a ladder, Jake climbed the gouges his fight had carved into the pit wall. "You threw me in here, thinking I was prey," he said, reaching the top. "But humans stopped being prey 50,000 years ago. We became the thing that even predators fear." The crowd scattered, not from aggression, but from understanding. This wasn't a prisoner. This was a human. Krathsol's remaining guards raised their weapons, their hands trembling. Jake simply raised his own blood-covered hands. "Here's what happens next," he sighed calmly. "You'll release every prisoner. You'll withdraw from the 3 human colonies you occupy, and you'll send a message to your Dominion. Earth is off." And if we refuse? Krathso gasped, feeling the poison take hold. Jake smiled. Then I stop offering mercy. What you just saw, that was me being patient. He had the antidote in his boot the whole time. Krathso looked at this terrifying, impossible human and made the only choice he could. Agarith. Later, when human diplomats arrived, they found Jake Morrison sitting on Krathso's throne, teaching the warlord's former soldiers how to play poker. Sergeant, the diplomat sighed. You were supposed to be rescued, not start a revolution. Jake just shrugged. Seemed inefficient to wait. Besides, I was bored. How do you explain that to Command? You don't. You just let the galaxy learn a simple truth. The quarantine around the death world of Earth wasn't to protect humanity from the galaxy. It was to protect the galaxy from humanity, and they were right to be afraid. Thanks for watching.